Live from Balan's Wonderworld, Balan and his Wonderworld presents TFW, your Juicin Your Game Hard Award for when it feels good to be playing a game. Presented by Balan Wonderworld from Balan Wonderworld. Hot Wheels Unleashed has been such a joyful surprise this year, managing to combine the fun, aesthetic, and scale of Hot Wheels with the blistering pace and limited design of an arcade racing game. We haven't seen a Hot Wheels game of this quality since the one developed for Windows 98, and while it isn't as feature-rich as larger, more established games like Forza or Trackmania, Hot Wheels Unleashed is laser-focused on the essentials. Boosting out of sick drifts, maneuvering your car in midair, doing loops, and extending the gameplay by creating your own tracks, liveries, and racing online with your friends. The way the Italian team at Milestone put this all together and continues to update it with new tracks, cars, and tools makes for a game that is nigh endlessly enjoyable. Every day that I've played Hot Wheels Unleashed this year, I've seen players finding new, imaginative, and creative ways to put the pieces together to make for fun, chaotic, or just plain goofy, laugh-out-loud racetracks. If you're looking for me next year, you'll probably find me juicing my DeLorean in the Batcave, trying to jump through a dino pult from the top of the Bat computer. Or maybe you can catch me juicing with my friends on Engineer Insane.
Wait, I can't get high enough.
Yes! Oh, fuck! Yeah, baby!
Oh my god. Oh my god. This shit is fucking insane.
This track was made by some kind of engineer, clearly suffering from insanity. And that's why Hot Wheels Unleashed is the juicinest game of 2021.
So how much do you know about the game?
Very little. I met a so-called Reaper, who gave a rather extensive exegesis. At which point my cognitive powers began to fail me.
Relatable.
It's rare to come across a character that manages to poke fun at a subculture while simultaneously showcasing an immaculate sense of growth from beginning to end. But Nagi Usui from Neo The World Ends With You manages to get the job done and more. Nagi, to put it bluntly, is the best foil to everything surrounding her game, not just in character, but also in aesthetics. Her large glasses, oversized graphic tee, and eat-a-bag decorated with handmade pins of her favorite character from a gacha game clash perfectly with the Hypebeast-approved outfits of the protagonists you've encountered so far. Her dialogue is expansive and sesquipedalian. She lacks any sense of cool that most of the cast exude near effortlessly, and her English language voice actor Miranda Parkin has mentioned that they played her as the most awkward lesbian they possibly can. In a sense, she's the most human character out of the whole cast, and by the end of the game, this becomes her biggest leverage. It's not hard to fall in love with the way Nagi interacts with the world. She'll glare at you flatly if you mess up her food order, but then emit a beam of light from her mouth when something is, to use her own words, positively ambrosial. You'll hear as many battle quotes from her as you will screams of terror, and the phrase, "Pardon the intrusion," becomes an internal psych-up of sorts, as you use her dive ability to enter demanding gauntlet battles with formidable noise. In a way, Nagi acts as a surrogate for the player that recognizes this might not be their first Reaper's game. She is someone who understands the relationships between people, who strives to learn about others and make sure everyone feels heard and accepted. Nagi knows that she defines how big or small her world can be, and chooses to use that strength to support others who are just coming to realize that, much like many of us are now beginning to give more advice than simply receive it. In a year that felt tumultuous due to the uncertainty of everything, Nagi's resilience and fervent passion were infectious and outright inspiring. Maybe I'll go ahead and check out what elegant strategy is all about.
These are the banished.
Affirmative.
They smell even worse than I imagined.
You can smell them.
Well, an array of sensors in your armor can, and I analyze the input. You smell fun, by the way.
Perhaps in some alternate world, Halo Infinite could have had all sorts of interesting characters, but instead we get the weapon. The weapon is a clone of Cortana, developed with the express function of killing the old Cortana, who has become evil and done some pretty messed up stuff. With the creation of a new Cortana in the modern era of AAA games, coming up with a new premise that doesn't completely revolve around sexualized mommy girlfriends taking care of their soldier husbands, there was a tentative level of hope in my heart. You know, maybe Halo will finally have a cool or even funny woman to make up for all of the various attempts at writing female characters that both Bungie and 343 have suffered with over the last 2 decades. But instead, we get this collective of tropes and Whedonisms, and it's just the most embarrassing relitigation of games writing. With Master Chief being fairly soft-spoken and the only other character involved in the main story spending most of his time off-screen, you end up hearing a lot of the weapon, and wow, does it wear you down.
This isn't Forerunner. It identifies as banished.
Can you operate it?
In my sleep? Not that I sleep, but... Oh! I don't need to. It's already on its way down.
Incoming.
But what if it's a friend?
It isn't.
As you navigate through the open world of this new Halo ring, the weapon is sure to have a really funny bit to announce each new fun activity you find yourself wandering into. Whether it's making jokes about the various people that you're straight up killing, or even just the most generic, amazing mission complete. That right there is why you're the best chief you've ever heard. The weapon always has something to say. In the core missions of Halo Infinite, the weapon fluctuates between an ignorant child, an omniscient supercomputer, and the type of strawman woman that the guys who go on and on about the old ball and chain love to invent. There could have been interrogations into Cortana's motives and beliefs through the weapon. There could have been some sort of genuine actual acknowledgement that the relationship between Master Chief and his AI is kind of messed up. Instead, at the end of the game, the weapon announces that her new name will be Cortana, perpetuating a cycle that she should have been the end of.
Resident Evil Village is stupid. But it's that special kind of stupid that makes me laugh out loud, clutch my forehead, and mutter, "Oh wow," under my breath. It's a game where an extremely tall vampire woman cuts your hand off with her huge nails, and you graft it on moments later. There's an evil dollhouse where you run from a giant fetus demon. There's a guy with the most insane accent I've ever heard who controls metal and says bitch like he's being held at gunpoint to be sexist. It rules. On top of all that silliness, Resident Evil Village is downright fun to play. Structured similarly to Resident Evil 7, it builds on the house the Bakers built with better combat and easier treasure hunting, filling each new location with memorable encounters and intriguing puzzles. I don't think it does anything truly revolutionary, but it does everything it's trying to do so well, and is clearly having a blast every step of the way. Resident Evil Village is this style of Resident Evil polished to a fine sheen, and I can't wait for Resident Evil 9, with whatever nutso psychic-powered kids and plant monsters it dares to bring into the franchise. However, the real John's pick of 2021 is Shin Megami Tensei, like, all of it, or at least what I've played so far. I finally dug into 4 after falling face first into the ground every time I tried the training grounds. I finally made it over that hump. My goodness, did I become obsessed. I've beaten 4 and 4 Apocalypse so far, and I've started 3, 5, and Strange Journey, and now I daydream about buying a samurai cosplay to wear around the house. I know it's crazy that my answer for Game of the Year isn't just SMT5, but I haven't played enough of it yet. So for now, I'm just gonna say that Resident Evil 8 is my favorite game of 2021, and that I'm just really glad that Shin Megami Tensei has entered my life this year. May war continue to break out in heaven, and may we all keep rejecting just one more god.
We went back and forth so many times on what single moment could be the best moment from FF14 Endwalker, a game that's nigh endless for dramatic and emotional high spots. But we know you want something that goes hard and won't settle for second best. So here you go. When Endwalker begins, our character, the Warrior of Light, is a little bit pissed off that this light, we're the Warrior of, our Mother Crystal, the person who got us into this mess a decade ago, telling us to kill every primal we can, yeah, she's also a primal. She wants to be the last primal, ostensibly. It's a little rude to have omitted that from our discussions over these last 4 expansions as we've taken down empires in her name. Maybe not surprising, but still, we're pissed. But that's actually not the weird part. The weird part is that she's also literally a woman from our long ancient past, and we know that when women inhabit primals, it's basically at the sacrifice of their soul. I hate it when women inhabit primals at the sacrifice of their soul. So now our question is, what drives someone to such a brink of cataclysm that their only solution is to turn on their own people, shatter reality into 14 parts, and put all of their hope that a civilization with 1/14 the strength of her own can save the entire sundered world 10,000 years down the line, while somehow maintaining a primal form that entire time? Do you want to see what a miracle looks like? Here's a single Hail Mary moment.
So let there be no way back. From that temptation, I sunder us. No more shall man have wings to bear him to paradise. Henceforth, he shall walk.
One moment that contains inside of it an entire universe, the creed of a whole MMO's history, a will to keep living even well after it would be so much easier to give up and die. Yeah, this goes hard as hell. Not to say nothing about how much this references and retroactively legitimizes the entire history of this game as a meta-narrative. It suffices to say, we will keep walking until the end.
Activision Blizzard dominated the news cycle for much of the latter half of 2021 for all of the wrong reasons. The result of a 2-year investigation of the company instituted by the state of California led to the release of a damning investigative report that detailed years of sexual harassment and workplace abuse at the company. Things from there went further south, and the situation is still developing to this day. The company was met with an avalanche of bad press, financially damaging fallout, and internal resistance by its own employees and affiliated workers.
Things are finally maybe coming to a close, sort of in Activision's favor. They settled with the EEOC for a $18 million fund to, quote, compensate and make amends with workers who are affected by workplace abuse. And the workers with the union are actually really unhappy about this amount. They called it, quote, pennies. And if you just look at their last Q1 earnings for this year, they made a profit of $2.28 billion.
Unfortunately, one of a huge vocal person from that group, Jessica Gonzalez, who was I believe a senior test analysis. That's someone who's been there for quite a while. Unfortunately, has made a declaration to resign from the company, and and I'm also using it as an example, not that it's oh man, this is devastating. Of course, there's so many workers at Blizzard hoping to still make change and hoping to very critical of the company, but mostly using it as an example of that their company is definitely hemorrhaging.
They are currently, complaining about not being able to bring folks in or retain them. They are trying to say that they wanted to bring a woman onto their board of directors, but Microsoft's acquisition isn't letting them, even though there was a mandate saying that they needed to do that back in 2019, and the acquisition does not go into effect until 2023.
Although it is easy to frame these circumstances as a single company's fall from grace, what has happened and continues to culminate around Activision Blizzard is not an isolated incident, encompassing all the things still wrong with the games industry at large. Although the situation around Activision Blizzard continues to surface uncomfortable and upsetting conversations, as they will remain a significant topic in the news cycle for a long while, dire circumstances always beckon the catalyst for positive change. Even within the Discord, through the upsetting revelations of the misconduct that occurred behind Activision Blizzard's closed doors, the company's workers fought back in full force, speaking against their employers' ills through various labor actions, calling for them to make amends and guarantee better protections in the workplace. Activision Blizzard workers have also stood by and supported their fellow colleagues at Raven Software, who have since formed SHOP as the Game Workers Alliance. Officially, the first legally recognized video game union in North America is at indie studio Vodio Games. This is but a few ripples part of a bigger surge of pro-unionization efforts across the United States as of recent, catalyzed by and in response to events and issues even beyond the scope of the games industry. The games community at large seems to have been generally supportive of these recent developments, but it is important to acknowledge that the tenacity of gamers can be a little too powerful in both good and bad ways. In the wake of the Endwalker expansion, wildly acclaimed MMO Final Fantasy XIV servers were pushed to their limits. The anticipation for this huge update and an unprecedented population spike of new players worsened the game's server congestion to astronomical levels. The game's team decided that the best possible option to remedy these problems was to temporarily halt all sales and marketing for the game. What other title can claim that it was so successful that it simply broke?
It's not hard to find Cruelty Squad talked about in the most reductive ways possible. I've seen it described as, quote, just a huge shitpost, or called a doomer game, or called a shitty shooter with boo, isn't capitalism bad, ham-fisted in. The thing about good art, though, is that it can draw this kind of reaction, that it can be utterly alienating and still be captivating. It doesn't matter whether or not Vil Caleo desperately set out to make a game that manages to be such a poignant reflection of millennial malaise, the brutal inhumanity of the gig economy, and the divine altar of the capitalist market that both liberals and conservatives alike cannot stop worshipping under. The fact is that he did it, and it fucking rules. Cruelty Squad, to me, is a fully throated anti-capitalist screed. Through its satire, it paints a world where market forces and divinity become intertwined, and the dollar is worth more than human life. Lesser games like The Artful Escape will try to sell you on how big and cool and important its message is, while being utterly shallow and trite. Tons and tons of games in our contemporary gaming landscape try to be dirty and weird, but still sacrifice part of their message to be accessible. In this vein, Cruelty Squad is as subversive as it gets. It's so subversive that absolute clown drawn to death's David Jaffe for some reason thought it would be something he'd enjoy, and then proudly claimed he got a refund for it. The game isn't good though because some absolute fools don't understand it. The game is good because it understands modern gaming conventions so well and completely undercuts them at every step, and it's still fun as hell. It looks terrible, using extremely low poly models and almost gleefully disregarding any kind of anti-aliasing. The textures are extremely low res and vividly colorful in a way that makes it look like a child built it out of Legos that were not color coordinated in the least bit, and then also the kid threw up on them a little bit for good measure. The music sounds like presets from a broken Casio keyboard, all the notes just being slightly off key. What Consumer Soft Products has made here is not simply ugly, it's a triumph. Playing it for the first time can be headache-inducing, and yet you eventually get used to it, realizing just how much care and consideration was put into the game's utterly perplexing aesthetic. Even with the way this game looks, the enemies still all stand out visually, even when the comically bad lighting system draws them in complete shadows. You can almost always tell who is an enemy and who's a civilian, which makes gunning down civilians, even accidentally, an act that has seemingly no penalty whatsoever, and honestly a couple upsides in the organ trading market, still makes you feel like shit. Unique enemies are visually distinct, like the constantly respawning naked zombie creatures that feel like they're straight out of a creepypasta of a game for the Nintendo 64. Or the necromechs that are simply extremely large police officers that are dual-wielding LMGs. It's not just the visuals and the music that make this game so different from any contemporary shooter, it looks and plays like the Rainbow Six games for the original PlayStation, which relied on an extremely quick time to kill for both you and enemies, making every time you stare anyone down an extremely tense who can pull the trigger first type of scenario. You reload by right-clicking and dragging the cursor off screen like a light gun game a la Time Crisis. The levels are huge, but they're not
super open world huge that people are used to nowadays. Instead, Vil directly drew inspiration from Super Mario 64 to make them both tightly contained and full of weird secrets, on top of just tons of silly little gags for players to find. There's obvious stuff like NPCs that will deliver absurd lines to you, but sometimes you'll find a hallway that just gets progressively smaller until it gets so small that you can't possibly exit it. You can also go to the hall where the exit leads out of and just see an incredibly tiny door on the floor. One of the people you're meant to assassinate on the second level, Paradise, is in a room where the walls are covered in an extremely low-res texture of Funko Pops. If you die too many times, you are put in easy mode without a specific explanation that you've been put in easy mode. The writing in the game too is truly impeccable. For as iconic as the Dark Souls "you died" screen is in my brain, it's forever topped by the words "Divine Light Severed" in my personal lexicon. Cruelty Squad is an incredible journey. Despite it being so different from everything else in the gaming space in 2021, it still managed to sell incredibly well and find a huge audience. It's a testament to how the homogenization of AAA games will never satisfy everyone forever, and that people are always looking for experiences that are different and challenging. Not just in the gameplay sense either, but in other more intangible spiritual and political ways as well. I've played a lot of games this past year. Even while I was typing away in a virtual command line searching for secrets as part of Inscription's ARG, I was still thinking about what a beautifully counterculture game Cruelty Squad is in a marketplace where everything is trying to be different by being the exact same. And it does so simply by being the things it wants to be. It's a game I've personally described to people as, what if Deus Ex met Dilbert 3?
Give me the Gep gun. The Gep gun might be useful.
And it didn't surprise me at all to find out that Dilbert 3 was one of its direct inspirations. This game kicks ass! Even if you think you'll hate it, you should at least give it your attention. After all, what else is a work of art for?